Welcome back to another bonus episode of Best Hour of Their Day. I got a ton of amazing feedback from you guys last week when we gave you the prologue, the intro chapter to my book, Best Hour of Their Day, and followed up the chapter with a discussion taking a deeper dive into my early years getting involved in my wrestling career and pre-CrossFit when I was just teaching group fitness and personal training for what seemed like 35 hours a day. Well, today is going to be the first chapter of the book, Best Hour of Their Day, and I'm super excited to present it to you. If you guys are loving this, please let me know. I hope you are. If you're enjoying it enough that you want to go purchase the audiobook, you can do that on Audible. And of course, I have the link in the bio here. So if you have any feedback, you have comments, you have questions, I'd love to answer them. I wrote this book as a passion piece, as a passion project. It was something I really cared about. One day I just started writing, and 30 chapters later and a whole lot of editing, I was done. So I really hope you enjoyed it. And I also want to give a shout out to the dude that's interviewing me, James McDermott. You probably recognize that we have a great rapport. That's because James was one of my head coaches at Albany CrossFit. He came to me as an intern, which we talk about a lot in these chapters, and he worked his way up to a coach and then ultimately my head coach. And he's one of the most fantastic human beings I know, as well as just one phenomenal coach. If you want to find out more about James, if you just think his voice is sexy, you can check out his own podcast. It's The Barbell Strikes Back. He's kind of a Star Wars nerd, spoiler alert. And you can also check out some of the books. He wrote a book with John North about Olympic weightlifting, and he's got a couple other really top secret books in the works that I'm not allowed to talk about. But trust me, if you like fitness, if you love CrossFit, if you just enjoy listening to people talk about their journeys through the health and wellness industry, you're going to want to check him out. You can find him on Amazon. You can find him on Instagram, all those places, James McDermott. So once again, here's chapter 1 of my book, Best Hour of Their Day.
All right, Jay, we're talking about chapter 1 of Best Hour of Their Day, Go All In. Whether it be a plate of all-you-can-eat sushi, hitting a workout, or starting a business, I have a feeling that going all in is a big part of your daily and life mantra. Can you explain the philosophy of go all in a little more and how it plays into how you go about your day?
Well, as you said, specifically for all you can eat sushi, I always go all in. But we talked about it a little bit in the prologue, and there are times to just set mini goals and tiptoe, just dip that toe in the water. But there are times where you just gotta, scream cannonball and jump into the icy cold, rivers and streams that are nearby your home. And this was one of those scenarios. I think for some things, if you don't say, hey, I'm doing this, I'm giving my 100%, I'm diving in head first, you're not going to be successful. You're always going to have whether it's a backup plan or you see coaches that, run a box, but they have a real job on the side. For me, it was just, I needed to do it. I needed to give 100%. I needed to make a change. And it is something I try to do. And especially the most important aspects of my life, be it coaching at the box, my own training, or even just my relationship. It's with my wife. You have to be fully committed.
Now, you're very used to going all in and hitting things head on. Has there been a time, or are there examples of moments where you didn't go all in and maybe you regretted it a little bit? Can you think of any specifics?
I think you can always look back and think of regrets or things that I would, I'd love to be, a rock and roll superstar, touring the country. And I have taken guitar lessons and I practice a little, but it's definitely something I didn't go all in on. Or, even to some extent, I owned a yoga studio back in the day and I was very into yoga, but I never went all in. I had a yoga practice and I did it, and I had my yoga studio that was in downtown Albany, but it wasn't my passion. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed teaching people, but I definitely didn't go all in. I always kept a little side job going. I owned my yoga studio, but would do personal training on the side at other gyms or teach classes elsewhere. And that's why I've given this advice to people, James, where they own their own business. And I've said, you've got to quit any other job you have, because if you're spending time waiting tables, or you're spending time, doing something online to make a few dollars, that's time that should be spent on your business. If you can't make up for the, $50 you make waiting tables on a Sunday morning on working on your own business, you need to shut your business down.
Yeah. It's also a great way not to get a deal on Shark Tank if they find out you have that side job.
Well, and exactly, because you wouldn't want to team up with somebody that isn't fully committed, right? You're investing, be it money, time, any energy. And if they're not committed, why are you going to be committed? So I think, yeah, you see that all the time on Shark Tank. Like, oh, you still have a real job? I'm out.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt about starting my first CrossFit affiliate.
Well, let's dive right into that. The early days of starting your affiliate, first you had to get the level 1, and it was in Canada. So you had to travel, you had to get hotel expenses. The cert itself cost $1,000. So, and you didn't have that money in your bank account, and you had to go all in. And what drove you to make that decision? What about CrossFit pulled you in that you're like, okay, I am going to go all in, and I'm going to travel to another country, and I'm going to go do this, cert?
Travel to another country like
Yeah.
Canada. But I think it just, some things are serendipitous, if you will, and CrossFit came to me just the right time. In the book I talk about, I was kind of lost, ready to leave the fitness industry on a bike ride with Susie, and I'm like, I got to do something with myself. And I just kind of saw that without making a change, I was either going to be forever chasing clients as a personal trainer, which I didn't hate, but I was getting very burned out, or having to take another path completely and get a real job as a teacher or a school psychologist with my master's degree. So I fell in love with CrossFit on day one. Luckily got in touch with, back in the day, Nicole Carroll used to respond to all the affiliate inquiries and questions, and there weren't level 1s every weekend, and there certainly weren't 10 or 20 of them every weekend. And she said, hey, then the closest ones to you are Pittsburgh or Toronto. And little did I know at the time, those would be the last 2 seminars that Coach Glassman regularly showed up to. He still shows up once in a while, but not the same as he was literally the guy teaching every single lecture that we had, from what is CrossFit to the press group. And just to show for me how much my life has changed, when was this? 2007. So 13, 14 years ago, just a simple trip to Canada, 6-hour drive. It's like I pack up the car with probably too much luggage. My girlfriend is with me. Like, we're looking at places to eat. Having traveled, for over 200 seminars now, after, 10 years, my life on the road is much simpler. But to me, back in the day, that was like a huge excursion, like you said, traveling to another country, where nowadays that's just a typical, I've flown to Dubai and back over a weekend. So it's a little different than Toronto, Canada.
Yeah. So it's definitely, once you get used to traveling, it doesn't phase you as much. Whereas someone like myself, I don't travel often. It's like, oh, we're going to New York City. Wow. All right.
Yeah, and you're
Um,
like, hey, Joanna, pack up your car, pack up your things, we're going away. And it was the same thing. The girl I was living with, it's like, of course I want you to come. Where now, when I go away for the weekend, Ross is like, do I have to go? Like, I don't want to go. It's like, no, you stay home. I'm going to work.
yeah. Now, I mean, at this level 1, Glassman was there, but it's also a star-studded level 1 that many CrossFitters and coaches today would kill to be able to go to get this kind of a coaching staff. You had Annie Sakamoto, Ava Twardokins, John Gilson, Pat Sherwood, Dave Castro, and Glassman there. Do you remember specifically who did what? Were they mostly just assistants to Glassman, just giving quick and concise cues, or did they actually lead lectures? What was kind of the format of this level 1, if you
So,
remember?
I remember bits and pieces, because at the time you're not realizing how unique this is. So I
Yeah.
remember we stayed at a hotel that was walking distance, and it was at CrossFit Toronto, which was basically in this empty warehouse, and it was freezing cold, like no heat in there. And I believe it was September, October of 2007. So it was getting to be pretty cold. And I can tell you, when we did Fran, right before lunch on day one, my forearms were like locked up because they were so cold. And you ever have that pain in your forearms where you've just like overdid it? Like I couldn't get them to feel better again. But I remember walking in, and one of the first people I saw were Coach Glassman. And it's, this is before the day and age of like influencers and famous people on YouTube and Instagram. And I was like, wow, that's the guy from the videos. And then you start to look around and you do see like the Nicole Carrolls and the Eva T's and all those, the Gilsons who I'd been in touch with. And so for those listening, if you go on YouTube, there's a video of Gilson and who was he? I forget who he was. And his name was Anthony Bainbridge, I believe, from Canada. And they were in the middle of this like competition going on where the loser had to work out in a dress. And I was at the seminar where Gilson had to do that. He had to work out in a dress. But I remember him talking to me about programming and talking to me about equipment. It was, I'm like, wow, this is John Gilson talking to me.
Was he wearing the dress while he was talking to you about all that?
No, he's back in his normal attire again.
Okay.
And I remember watching Pat Sherwood do a workout that was like 5 muscle ups, 15 overhead squats for 5 rounds. And that wind up being on the CrossFit Journal. Because back then, there's only one level 1. So everything they filmed was then used on .com, where now they probably have hours, days of unused footage that's not getting used, at the journal or on the YouTube channel. So Coach Glassman did the majority of the methodology lectures. I remember that. I honestly don't remember who demoed the movements. I remember sitting front row. I don't remember who demoed the movements, but I do remember right before the second half of day 1, they do the presses lecture, and he brings Nicole Carroll out there. And you can see other versions of this. I don't think this one is on the CrossFit channel, but he used to bring Nicole Carroll out, and he would do 2 demos, one of the overhead squat, which she didn't do this weekend, but she did a press demo. So basically he hands her 115 and he says, take this overhead as many times as you can. And actually I misspoke. Right before that, he pulled somebody out of the crowd, and his name was Barry. I remember he owned CrossFit Orange. He had recently passed away, recently meaning, current time. In 2019, he passed away. But we remained friendly after the level 1. So he pulls Barry up there and he goes, press this barbell. And I think Barry got 17 reps at 115. Nothing, pretty strong. Then he brings Nicole up there, and she starts to hit it, but as push jerks. And she, of course, then beats Barry and gets like 18 reps. And that's kind of the beginning of the press lecture. This is a more efficient movement. Let's talk about how we do it. So I remember that. And then I remember, the only other thing I remember is Dave Castro doing the GHD lecture. But outside of that, it was mostly Coach Glassman. We did Tabata squats really early on day 1, bottom to bottom Tabata squats. The entire group of people, which is like 50 participants and, another 20 or so people taking their quote unquote level 2, which back in the day just meant you came back to take your level 1 again. And then I slightly remember the breakout groups. I remember Tony Budding coaching me on the snatch. But yeah, it's, it's hard to think back and remember that, because again, it's like back then you didn't think it was anything special or unique. Now we look back and we're like, wow, those were some superstars.
Yeah, and you don't realize, because you're living in the moment, you're living it as it's going on, that these are going to be future very influential people in the fitness industry, and CrossFit's going to take off, and all this stuff is going to happen from it. If you're talking to someone who's thinking about taking their level 1 right now, again, we don't realize that we're living something awesome while it's happening. What advice would you give to someone who's going to take their level 1 and might be in a situation like you are, where maybe 10 years down the road, it's Jason Ackerman, the best hour of their day, and they didn't, they're taking the level 1 view? Are there things that they should talk to with instructors, like ask extra questions, try to get more FaceTime, volunteer more? Like, what are things that you would recommend that maybe you wish you would have done as well?
I definitely think, little things. I would definitely take a picture with the trainers on staff, just to remember it. We typically, after the seminar ends, there's 3 to 5 people that want to take a picture with the trainers. Sometimes that line gets crazy and everybody, once one person does it, everybody wants to, but do that so you have that kind of, as a memory. And then just with every section and notes, I would just encourage you to, write down who gave it, take good notes there. But really, as far as enjoying it, I would say the challenge is, there's a test. So a lot of people kind of get a little worried about the test and then they lose sight of just enjoying the moment. The test is what it is, pass or fail, enjoy the weekend, be present and just have a good attitude. And we pick up on that. If you're smiling and you're having a good time, the trainers have a better time and we enjoy being around you.
I like that. Just immerse yourself in the experience and make memories.
Yeah, try to treat it differently than everything else in your life. Put your phone down. Don't worry about texts and social media. Just sit there and listen and enjoy.
Now, at the end of the seminar, you ask Glassman for a piece of advice. And in the text, you say that all he's basically said to you was care. Was there anything that you remember from dealing with Len or Greg at the seminar, or maybe after, where the way he cares is exemplified to you?
No, just seeing his passion for the weekend and seeing him, especially back then. I mean, obviously things have changed in the last 13 years for him, but back then it was just like, you can tell he was just someone really excited about what he was doing. It was on the cusp of becoming this phenomenon and changing the fitness industry. But just seeing that, like, he was sitting there talking to people. Like during lunch, he didn't disappear into his own room. He just hung out and chatted with people. Dinner, like Saturday night, everyone was invited out. He's there hanging out. I mean, now he's a, if not billionaire, certainly a millionaire. And I don't think it's changed him necessarily, but you can tell back then he was just a trainer that really sparked something new. So it was cool to see. And, again, in retrospect, you didn't realize what this was going to become. To me, it was just like, I found this awesome thing called CrossFit, but it was no different than taking any other certification I had been at or training. I had taken dozens over the years, from yoga to kickboxing to personal training courses. Like, this is another one. You didn't realize this is going to be the one that truly, truly changes your life.
Now, one more question based off of that weekend and the spark of your diving into being a box owner and a CrossFit trainer. You do the level ones quite often now, almost every weekend. You're on the level one staff. And how do you think you stack up versus Glassman on giving some of those lectures?
I would tell you, I can tell you this, I probably hit the timeline better than Coach Glassman would do
Okay.
today, right? Meaning he would just, every lecture has a specific amount of time we're given to present it. And Coach is notorious for going off on tangents and talking about what he wants to talk about. But, that's like someone covering all along the Watchtower. Like, you can make a great cover, but it's not going to touch, Bob Dylan. Everybody equates it to Jimi Hendrix, but it's really Bob Dylan's song. And I think, the true fans and the true rock musicians realize that. And it's the same with Coach Glassman. Like, I like to think that I'm one of the best, lecturers on staff. I put a lot of time, effort, and energy into my lectures and really care about them. But it still doesn't hold a candle to what Coach Glassman would do.
So you're saying you're Hendrix.
Yeah, I'm like Jimmy. I've taken a great lecture or a great song, tweaked it up a little bit, but there's still the original.
Perfect. Now, later on in the chapter, you talk about how some of your first experiences with members and the early days of having a gym, where you can almost be too generous as a trainer or a box owner, meaning giving people deals on their memberships and things like that. And I think a lot of people get into coaching and owning a gym because we want to help people. And sometimes you can get taken advantage of. Do you think that in a way, it's almost bad coaching to be too generous on some things with your time or how much you're giving a certain someone, or it's sometimes good to let them fend for themselves a little bit?
I think it's a balance of both, and I think it's really, let's talk about the present there, which is like, 2007, you open, and I'm just like, man, I need to get as much money as I can. And that might mean someone saying, hey, I don't have $100, because I think that's what I was charging to kick off, or even feeling guilty about it because I'm a trainer who went from charging, I think my rate at that time was like $40 an hour. So now I'm asking for 100. It's not one-on-one, and a lot of those were my clients. So I have to really ask them for that additional $60. And, you're just like, well, I need to pay the bills. That first rent check of $850 that I had to pay to the court club. It's like, I need to get there and need to buy equipment. And again, I put all my money into this and borrowed money from my girlfriend at the time. So, if I knew now, or if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have given the deals. Because the other thing I would say on that, and you've been a part of this numerous times at Albany CrossFit, I won't bring up names, but if you're giving out discounts to members, those are the members that you get resentful of, are shitty members, and aren't appreciative of what you're doing. Now, that's not to say all of them fall into that, but you and I can make some eye contact over this call and immediately think of a handful that fall into that category. And I talk about it later on where it's like, I just gave you a discount and you're posting a picture on social media of you at a fancy restaurant with a $200 bottle of wine. I'm trying to pay my bills too. So if you're listening to this, I'm not saying never discount memberships, but I'm saying do it rarely and make sure it's for the right person and for the right reason. And early days, that cost me actually like a pretty serious relationship. I don't think I talk about it in the book, and I don't want to use names, but I had a really good friend who didn't quite get that I was running a business now. I used to help her out all the time, train her for free. And when I opened the business, I was like, I need to charge you. Like, I need to run this as a business. She didn't like it. And it really, it ended our friendship pretty much. And I stuck by it because I was like, I need to treat this as a business, and I realized if I give it to you for free, it's other people are going to come back to me. And, unfortunately it ended a friendship, but it, taught me a valuable lesson. And it was something I wound up saying to a lot of members going forward, hey Jay, I thought we were friends. I'm like, yeah, we are, which is why I would think as my friend, you would want to pay me what I should be paid. Your buddy owns a restaurant. You're not like, hey, serve me for free. It's like, and that's a lesson I've learned over the years. Like, if someone is your friend, you want to give them their value.
So it's a weird psychological phenomena to kind of see that all play out. I don't know where it comes from, and I can see how both parties would get resentful of one another. No one's feeling as valued as they should be. Are there any moments where you're able to overcome that with someone, where they did finally realize, okay, this is a business, I need to support Jay, this is not a under the table friend type of thing?
Yeah, I can't think of any specifics, but I know I just got better about it, because especially those early days, I mean, first of all, the original 10 to 15 people were either my clients or friends, and then the next kind of group of people that came in, I talk about her in the book, Jess, who winds up bringing in like 10 of her friends from the Troy area. I mean, they were my age, and we became friendly. And back then it wasn't Mind Body Online or Wodify or whatever we're using. So I literally had to go up to these people once a month and collect cash or checks, which is hard, but I got over it because you're like, I need this to pay my bills. And then I think the longer I was established, I'm not talking years, I'm just talking months, the more confident you are. Like, you're like, this is real. At first you're like, we'll see what happens. Like Shai and I, the owner of the core club, didn't have a contract. It was a handshake for many years. And, you're like, well, if it shuts down, cool, we'll fix a couple of spots on the floor that we broke and you can have your racquetball court back. But then months into it, you're like, no, this is a real business, and I have to come up with $850 again. And I have to buy insurance now. And, I have to buy more equipment down the road because classes are getting busier, etc.
Did you ever have a moment in the early days where you kind of felt like you were almost like an imposter? Like, I know some new coaches go through like imposter syndrome, where they're like, okay, I did the level 1 cert and I've been working and shadowing other coaches, but I don't feel like I should be talking to people, or I should be doing this, or when did it become real for you? And did you ever feel like you didn't belong at first?
Luckily I never really felt that way. And I don't think it was because I felt like I was the great coach, but it was really, especially in the beginning, the first 10 people were like middle-aged women. So I knew I was their only coach. They already trusted in me. No one else was teaching this CrossFit thing. And then as the membership grew and it became younger, I was the fittest one there. So, sometimes it's your coaching ability, sometimes it's your fitness level, but I never really felt that way because I was the only one that had this experience. And at the time, it's, 10 years of coaching experience, and no one can really touch me as far as fitness level. That's not to say I was good, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I was the best in Albany until someone like Matt Hain, who will get excitement out of knowing I mention him. But until he came and I'm like, oh wow, that dude's fitter than me. Like we did Fran one day and he beat me. I was like, I'm no longer the best here.
And is that the same in regards to being a business owner? That you felt the same way about being a business owner and an entrepreneur?
I don't think it ever clicked that I was a business owner for quite some time. I don't even remember when that light bulb kind of went off. I think it finally went off when I was actually making real money and paying the bills. Because, we talk about going all in. I went from kind of full-time job at the core club, teaching lots of classes. I was teaching all over town, and I gave up basically everything in order to do this thing. And now it's like, well, now I have to pay my bills. And very quickly I was able to. And that's when I was kind of under that feeling like now I do have a business. But I never really thought of myself as a business owner. I just thought of myself as a trainer that had a little spot. And I don't remember. I think I probably didn't feel like a business owner until I had employees, until we had a coaching staff, so that's probably 2 or 3 years later. I'm like, wow, I'm in charge of other people's livelihood now. I need to run this better.
Do you have any advice for new business owners or new coaches that are a little unsure of themselves in the very, very beginning?
Well, the advice to business owners, like if you're opening a new box, would be treat it like you want it to be treated in the future. And that means doing things properly, getting an attorney, filing for your EIN, the classic government type stuff, set up your corporation or whatever. So you're protecting yourself, but then also, learning how you're going to pay your taxes and getting a good accountant. And then beyond that, really just strive to become the best that you can be at that. Treat it like a business, which means starting things on time, being organized, keeping the box clean. Back then, I don't even remember how we cleaned. I don't even know if we ever. I don't think we cleaned the box till you came along, James.
Oh gosh.
And that was 3 or 4 years later. But and there's Marley hair everywhere. So
There was a Marley corner in the
there
double.
was, yeah. So I would say just I tell this to people, and I didn't make this up. I think it was John Gilson that was kind of like, hey, if you want this rule to be in effect in 10 years, you have to put it into effect on day one. Because if you don't, it's going to be very hard to get your members to do it.
Yeah, it's hard to take things away if you've been letting it go for quite some time.
Exactly.
Now these early members, they were your personal training clients and group training clients. How did you get more members after that? Were you advertising? Were you out on the street with a sign? Like, what were you doing?
So those original members were, I think off the top of my head, it was Susie, Donna, Diana, Noreen, and then eventually a fifth one was Leonora. So those were all my middle-aged women clients. And then a few more came in. I had a client named Beth. Does Anne Marie still go there?
Yep, Anne Marie's still there.
That's crazy. 13 years later, Anne Marie is still there.
Yep.
Diana's
and
still
her 2 daughters too.
The twins?
Yep, they've been members for years now as well.
Just to give perspective, it's like those were 2-year-olds when I started coaching at the core club, and I used to just have so much fun with those 2 girls. They were crazy.
They just got their RN degrees and everything. They're in
You're
careers
making me
now.
Feel really old right now.
Yeah.
So Anne Marie's a great woman, but yeah, they were all my clients, and I remember back in the day there was a TypePad website, right? That's what I used. And I remember putting up a picture of those women and saying, who's going to get their pull-up first? That was the big challenge back then. Which one of these ladies is going to get their first pull-up? And I believe it was Diana. So if she's still around, give her a big hug for me. But I remember Nicole Carroll, just goes to show the difference. Back then, sends me an email that's really awesome that you're doing that and that these women are getting pull-up out of nowhere. she's checking the Albany CrossFit .typepad.com website. So those were my first few members. And then being in the Globo gym, being in the court club, a handful of people started joining, which of course presented its own problems with Shy because I'm taking his members, accidentally, but here we are having fun and they're looking at it. And then, like I say in the book, this girl, Jess Lasky, comes around, who was a friend of one of my clients, John Morrow. You remember John?
I don't remember him specifically.
He moved away, but he brought Jess in, and then it was just like we were off to the races. Once John and Jess came and we had that little bit of a younger crew, it just blew up. People like, I'm going to throw out some names: Toph, MJ, Andrea, Kelly, Ted, Jared, Alana. Remember all those people? Thinking back on it, it gives me great, like, fuzzy feelings because it's like that was so much fun back then. But it just kind of spiraled. There were no Facebook ads. Eventually we did that. Eventually we did some radio ads. Eventually we did some other stuff, but it was really word of mouth.
Now, I mean, at this time, you're getting new members in. You have a space that doesn't get cleaned too much. There's Marley hair everywhere, but you're doing everything else, which is a lot. You're managing the memberships. You're doing the programming. You're doing the website with all the photos, thousands of photos every night. How did you manage starting this business, maintaining and growing this business, but also staying fit at the same time? I've met quite a few box owners where that seems to go out the window right away, and they probably have more resources than what you had back in the day.
Yeah, no, that, you'll read about it in later chapters and we'll talk about it. But those first days, it was a little easier because honestly, I think the world was a little bit simpler. And I'm not trying to be cheesy, but it was like there was no social media at the time. Facebook was just coming about. So I wasn't having to worry about all those other things along the way. It was like, check your email regularly, put up a type pad, post every day, and then coach the classes. And I had lots of downtime throughout the day. And just to show you what it was like in 2007, I didn't even have a laptop back then. Like I used to have to sneak into the owner's office and log on to my email on his computer. Like it was
It's
before.
the same computer right now, by the way.
So, it was like, using a PC, at the time it was old. Now it's, even older. But, then eventually I remember getting my first Mac laptop because I was like, I need to be able to do more work during the day. And I got the old white one. Remember, like the classic Mac, the first laptop, that white one that came out. And I was like, wow, this is great. Like I can make videos. There's iMovie on it. And that's when it started to get a little bit out of control. But early days, and then other people would just show up early for class. I'd be like, let's hit a workout together. So it was always just squeezing in workouts here and there. And keep in mind, it was before that, huge push of competition where we didn't think, hey, I need to do another workout. It was like, cool, I did Fran. I'm done for the day. I did my thing.
Now, explain that. Like, what was the early day format of the class? Like, was there a whiteboard briefing? Was there a warm up? How long is Fran taking everyone? Are you just letting them go for 40 minutes, just grinding through it? Like, explain a day's worth of class.
Honestly, I need to think back and try to remember it. I mean, I remember at least for the first few months, there was no programming. I would literally go in the morning and just either ask them what they wanted to do, create something, or just like look up what CrossFit did, or maybe the 3 or 4 other boxes that I respected, and checked out what they put up there. And then I think, there was a little bit of a brief. I know that because I would have to sometimes explain the movements, and there was a little bit of coaching, but I think it was more just like a free for all. Like it just kind of ran its own course. There wasn't more than one piece necessarily, but it was kind of like, grab your bar, let's practice this, let's warm up together. And then ultimately you wind up getting some structure. But no, back then it was just a free for all.
And it took roughly about an hour or so.
Yeah, because there was only 1 or 2 classes a day in the evening. So it wasn't ever like there was back-to-back classes, maybe once, like I said, at 4:30, 5:30 type of thing. But, there's a morning class, an afternoon class, and then 1 or 2 evening classes. So you weren't in that time crunch like we are today.
Are there any crazy workouts off the top of your head that you guys did back then where you're like, I don't know if I would ever do that now? That
Uh,
was a little extreme.
so many. I mean, so every back then, I forget the exact day. It was like the first or last Friday of the month. There was an affiliate page, a CrossFit affiliate page, and they used to put up what they called a pain storm once a month. And every Friday we would hit it. Like not every Friday, the one Friday a month we would hit it. And those workouts were typically just really dumb. They weren't even from CrossFit, they weren't well programmed. They were just nonsense. And then it got to the point that we would make up our own to fill in the rest of the Fridays. And those just became what I would call kitchen sink workouts. And the one that brings a memory to my mind, and it's on YouTube, we called the Luck of the Lasky. And Jess would laugh about it if I was telling the story. And her, Jess, and at this time, like 3 of her sisters joined, a bunch of her cousins, and all of her family members. So it was right around St. Patrick's Day, so probably 2008. And I was like, Jess, make up a workout for the pain storm for St. Patrick's Day. And she just threw like every movement on there. It was like 3 rounds of 17 reps because it was like March 17th. I forget, but it was like so dumb. And yeah, people got rhabdo from workouts like that.
Did anyone get rhabdo in those early days?
There's one story. Does Ernie still go to the gym?
He actually pops in every once in a blue moon.
Yeah,
He'll
Ernie
come in for a few months.
was that's so funny. One of my original members, and then ultimately he bought like a lifetime membership, so he just kind of comes and goes.
Yeah.
But I remember like back then I didn't, you knew everyone. It was like 20 people. One of my earliest members, and I was like, "Where's Ernie been? I haven't seen him for a week now." And I shoot him an email, and he's like, "Funny story, Jay. I'll tell you when I come back. I'll be there Monday." So Ernie comes back, and I'm like, "Ernie, where you been?" He's like, "Oh, I had to go to the hospital. I got rhabdo." And I was like, "How'd you get rhabdo?" And I wasn't there. He did his own pain storm by himself and gave himself rhabdo.
Wow. So he just came into the gym, and so you had open gym.
Yeah, I forget if it was open gym or I was gone for the weekend. I used to go to every specialty seminar that I could, so I might have been gone on like a Friday, and they did it on their own. And yeah, he gave himself rhabdo. Thought it was funny at least. And this is before, not before rhabdo, but before there was this understanding of how you get rhabdo and why you get it. And that's like, okay, that opened my eyes to maybe too much is not a good thing.
And did that prompt you to start thinking about scaling more, and helping people modify their workouts and maybe even stopping people?
Yeah, that certainly played a role. And then, just getting more educated. Like I said, in 2008, I must have hit 10 specialty seminars. Coach Glassman was doing a 101, he used to call it a 101, and he would travel the country and just stop at boxes. And I saw him a handful of times, and just the entire world of CrossFit starting to get a little smarter.
Which one of those specialty seminars was your favorite?
Oh, I really enjoyed the gymnastics seminars back in the day. I mean, they're still great. I took the old one. I forget the guy that did it before Tucker. But that one was one of the hardest weekends I've ever had. It was just nonstop. And then I took it again. Tucker came to the box. I was lucky enough to take the weightlifting seminar with Bergner. They were all so great. I really enjoyed them all. I luckily took nutrition with Rob Wolf back in the day. So Kelly Starrett with the mobility seminar. So it was really cool. But I remember just really enjoying the gymnastics seminar and wanting to bring everything back because it was something that people could really incorporate daily and improve their CrossFit.
The gymnastics seminar is always a fan favorite. I've never
Yeah,
met
it's just,
anyone who read that.
yeah, it's just like real in the sense that you can practice this stuff every day. Where obviously you can practice the clean and jerk and the snatch or mobility, but I felt like the gymnastics one, especially back then, really related to everything else.
Well, Jay, I think we went all in on
Did we
chapter
go?
one. Pretty far. Do you have any closing thoughts? Any other things on your mind about this time period on taking your level one, traveling out to Canada, and those early days of starting a business?
No, but I do want to give a little shout out. I doubt he'll ever listen to this book, but I do want to give a shout out to Shai. I know you'll see him later today. So he owns Albany CrossFit now. He owned the Core Club, and I had a relationship with him since 2001. But, you know, Shy's a businessman, so I know he saw $850 coming in every month and was like, yes, I'll take it. And I know he probably didn't think of the repercussions and ramifications of having loud music and weight dropping at his box. But, if he wouldn't have let me rent that spot, I don't know where, what would have happened. I don't remember if it was in this chapter where I said, I was looking for places to rent, and my client Barry, who may still be a member of the court club, was like, no, rent a space here. Just rent this court. Racquetball is dying. It still is. I mean, and it's a great sport. I love racquetball. I love handball, and I love squash. But, it's typically an old man sport. The next generation isn't playing it. So there's 18 unused courts, and Shy let me rent one, but he didn't have to. So I really couldn't have done it with Shy, and I'm glad that Albany CrossFit is still running because of him. And the other shout out I want to give, again, she's not going to listen, but it's my ex-girlfriend from that time period. Her name was Nicki. Did you know Nicki?
Oh yeah. Yep. I used to try to just keep up with Nicki in the workouts.
Yeah, I mean, she was like, especially at the box, just like a beast. And she was tiny, 105 pounds, but she was just a beast. She was like the first girl that can do pull-ups, the first girl that can, she did a starting strength cycle, which was another great seminar I was able to take with Coach Ripito and go on the road with him for a few years, which took some time off of my life, traveling with that crazy Texan. But, obviously that relationship didn't work out, but she stuck with me probably longer than she should have, considering I basically neglected the relationship to run the box. So shout out to those two people who, if you're listening and you know them, let them know that I said something nice about them, please.
I will. I'll let Shy at least know.
Don't mention me to Shy.
All right.
but maybe one day he'll listen to this. And
Someday.
no, I think that's it. It's been really fun reminiscing on them. Just saying those names. And what's really cool is hearing. I bet you a lot of those early people. I mean, does Diana still come to the box?
Lady Di? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
She comes. Donna comes. Mark Wilder's there. Laura Garrison. Leonora. Who else? Marie. Anne
Marie is still there.
Yeah, Marie's still coming in.
I know some of the listeners at this point are like, what are these two rambling about? But Marie wouldn't ever tell us her last name, so we started just referring to her as her first name twice. And when I used to take pictures, she would yell at me like, no pictures, make sure I'm not in pictures. And if I ever caught her out of the corner of one and it made it to the site, oh man, she would freak out.
I remember getting an email about it as well.
And we're like, are you like in the witness protection program? Like, what's going on? And to this day, I don't know how old she is. I don't know what she does for a living, but some people are but her and her twin sister used to come to class. And yeah, just, what's cool is I'm really glad, that's only the people that stayed at Albany CrossFit, right? I know a lot of them have either gone on to other boxes in the area or maybe just moved and still do it. So especially those women that you threw out there, Donna's got to be, nearly 80 years old. She was like 80 when we started. Like, I don't know how old she is
I'm
now.
afraid to ask.
Yeah. She actually just texted me the other day. And, but seeing the impact it's had on someone like Leonora, who's amazing and does like strongman, still can do pull-ups, and she's got to be 60 years old now.
Yeah. And I mean, the nice thing is you can even look back at those old Albany CrossFit videos and see Donna doing pull-ups. I mean, granted, it was with a band back in the day, but still, how many ladies in their 70s could even do that?
Oh yeah, like James said in the other chapters, like go to YouTube and look up Albany CrossFits, sift through some of the there's plenty of great videos on there. But if you go back to, I'm sure you can look up chronologically, that first commercial I made was on that MacBook. I don't know if you remember, it had the Rocky music behind it.
Yep. And I remember all the coaches eventually had their own commercial too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I used to spend hours, and we talk about that later on about setting rules, but yeah, it was just hours. And that's where I was saying I would get home and just go up to the computer and work till 2 a.m. And that's what it really means to go all in. Like, you have to commit to it. You have to put every last dollar you have into it. And people talk about it, whether like comedians or musicians whose parents encourage them to make sure they have a college degree to have a backup plan. And they're like, no, because if I have that, I won't be successful. And that's kind of what this became. Like, obviously I had my degree, but I had no money left. And it was like, if this isn't successful, I got to figure out what I'm going to do with my life.
Well, I think that's a great way to end it, Jay. And there is chapter 1. Go all in.
Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to that special episode of Best Hour of Their Day. If you enjoyed, go ahead and download the book. You can check out the audiobook, you can check out the paperback, or even the ebook. We place the link right in the show description. So once again, thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your day.